The grand ballroom sparkled under cascading crystal chandeliers, their light dancing across marble floors polished to perfection. Vivienne Hart stood near the ornate entrance, smoothing the fabric of her borrowed emerald dress for the third time in as many minutes. Her friend Grace had insisted she attend this charity gala, promising it would be good for networking. Now, surrounded by women draped in designer gowns and men whose watches cost more than her yearly rent, Vivienne questioned that advice. She had coordinated dozens of events like this one, but always from behind the scenes. Being a guest felt different, exposed. The champagne flutes clinked in rhythmic celebration, laughter rolled through clusters of the city's elite, and everything seemed choreographed to remind her she did not belong. Then she saw him. Trevor Mason stood at the center of a circle of admirers, his tailored suit gleaming under the lights, his arm draped possessively around a woman whose jewelry probably cost more than Vivienne's car. His laugh carried across the room, sharp and familiar, a sound that once made her heart race, but now made her stomach turn. The moment of cruelty their eyes met across the crowd. For one painful second, Vivienne hoped he might simply nod and move on. They had been broken up for 8 months. Surely enough time had passed for civility. But Trevor's smile widened into something cruel. He raised his champagne glass deliberately, drawing the attention of everyone around him toward her. The conversations near him faltered, heads turned, and Vivienne felt heat crawl up her neck. "Well," Trevor announced. His voice projected with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. "Look who managed to sneak into another world above her pay grade. Still trying to climb that social ladder, Vivienne?" Scattered laughter erupted from his circle. Some guests looked away uncomfortably, but others watched with the hungry curiosity of people who thrived on drama. Vivienne's breath caught in her chest. She had prepared herself for the possibility of seeing Trevor tonight, but not for this. Not for the same public humiliation he had perfected during their relationship. "I heard she coordinates these events now," one of Trevor's friends added with mock admiration. "How clever to get invited to the parties you used to serve at." More laughter. Vivienne's vision blurred at the edges. Her throat tightened, and her hands trembled against the small clutch purse she carried. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the floor, to be anywhere but trapped in this moment. Trevor continued, emboldened by his audience. "Some people never learn their place. They keep reaching for things they can never truly have, hoping to catch a little bit of that sparkle. It's almost admirable, really. Almost." The words struck like physical blows. Vivienne had spent months rebuilding herself after their relationship ended, attending therapy, learning to silence the voice in her head that sounded too much like Trevor telling her she was not enough. Now, in front of hundreds of people, that voice roared back to life. The desperate Ricci stepped backward instinctively, her heel catching on the edge of a rug. She steadied herself, but her retreat only seemed to encourage Trevor. His circle pressed closer, their smiles sharp and knowing. Vivienne's mind raced through impossible options. She could leave, but walking away now would confirm everything Trevor said about her. She could confront him, but her voice felt locked inside her chest. Then, in her peripheral vision, she saw a hand. It was extended toward her, palm up, steady and unhurried. The hand belonged to a man standing slightly apart from the crowd, tall and commanding in a black suit that fit him like it had been crafted specifically for his frame. His face was composed, unreadable, but his dark eyes held hers with quiet intensity. Vivienne did not think. Instinct and desperation moved her fingers toward his, and when their hands connected, warmth flooded through her trembling body. His grip was firm without being forceful, grounding without being possessive. The simple contact steadied her racing heart just enough for her to take a full breath. The man turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across Trevor and the gathered crowd. He did not speak immediately, but something in his presence commanded attention. The laughter died. The smirks faltered. Even Trevor's confident posture shifted slightly. The silent declaration recognition rippled through the ballroom like a stone dropped into still water. Whispers began at the edges of the crowd, spreading inward with gathering intensity. Vivienne did not understand what was happening, but she felt the change in the air, the sudden weight of importance surrounding the man whose hand she held. He spoke finally, his voice low but carrying effortlessly across the space. "This is my companion for the evening." 5 simple words, but they landed with the force of an earthquake. The crowd's whispers became urgent murmurs. Trevor's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing without sound. The woman on his arm looked between Trevor and the stranger with wide eyes. Vivienne stared up at the man beside her, confusion and gratitude warring in her chest. She had no idea who he was, why he had offered his hand, or what this moment would cost her later. All she knew was that his touch had pulled her back from the edge of complete humiliation. The stranger's thumb brushed gently across her knuckles, a gesture so subtle only she could feel it. The message was clear. She was safe. At least for now. The aftermath of the gala continued around them, but everything had shifted. People who had been laughing moments before now watched with careful neutrality. Trevor retreated into his circle, his earlier confidence shattered. Vivienne remained frozen, her hands still enclosed in the stranger's grip. "Shall we?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward the main hall. She nodded, unable to form words. They walked together through the parting crowd, and Vivienne felt hundreds of eyes tracking their movement. Her mind spun with questions, but her body moved on autopilot. Guided by the steady presence beside her, they reached a quieter corner of the ballroom, away from Trevor's poisonous circle. The stranger released her hands slowly, as if giving her the choice to pull away. She did not. "Not yet, thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I do not know why you did that, but thank you." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You look like you needed a lifeline." "I did." She glanced down at their still connected hands. "But you did not have to risk your reputation for a complete stranger." "Perhaps," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly, "or perhaps I saw something worth protecting." Before she could respond, a waiter approached with a tray of champagne. The stranger took 2 glasses, offering one to Vivienne. She accepted it with shaking hands. "Julian Westbrook," he said simply. The name echoed in her memory. She knew she should recognize it, but shock had scattered her thoughts. "Vivienne Hart." "I know," he replied, and something in his tone suggested he knew more than just her name. As the evening stretched on, Julian remained at her side, a silent guardian against the stares and whispers. Vivienne's shock slowly transformed into cautious curiosity. This man, whoever he was, had just altered the trajectory of her entire night, possibly her entire life. And when the gala finally ended, and Julian walked her to the entrance, he pressed a card into her palm. "When the noise becomes too loud," he said quietly, "call me." Then he was gone, disappearing into a waiting car, leaving Vivienne standing beneath the stars with a business card and 100 unanswered questions burning in her mind. Vivienne woke to the harsh buzz of her phone vibrating across her nightstand. Sunlight streamed through her apartment's thin curtains, and for one blissful moment, she forgot the events of the previous night. Then her phone buzzed again, and reality crashed back. She reached for the device with heavy limbs, her body still exhausted from hours of restless sleep. The screen lit up with notifications, dozens of them, each one a fresh wound. Text messages from colleagues, missed calls from numbers she did not recognize. Social media tags that made her stomach drop. Grace had sent a string of messages, each more urgent than the last. The final one simply read, "Check the news. Call me immediately." Vivienne's fingers trembled as she opened her browser. The first headline made her breath catch in her throat. Mystery woman captures attention of tech titan Julian Westbrook at charity gala. Below it, a photo showed her hand clasped in Julian's. Their faces turned toward each other in what looked like an intimate moment. The image had been captured perfectly, the lighting making them appear like the only 2 people in the room. She scrolled further, her panic mounting with each article. Some called her a mystery woman. Others speculated wildly about her background. The cruelest ones, clearly influenced by Trevor's friends, painted her as an opportunist who had somehow manipulated her way into Julian's orbit. The fallout. By the time Vivienne arrived at work, the whispers had already begun. The small event coordination firm where she worked hummed with a different energy than usual. Conversations stopped when she entered. Eyes followed her to her desk. Even her supervisor, usually warm and encouraging, called her into his office with an expression of uncomfortable concern. "Vivienne," he began, gesturing for her to sit. "We need to discuss the situation." Her heart sank. "I did not do anything wrong. I know that," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "But perception matters in our business. Several clients have called this morning. Some are curious. Others are concerned about the attention you might bring to their events. So you want me to quit?" The words tasted bitter. "No." He leaned forward, his expression pained. "But I need you to take some time off. Let this settle down. Give people time to forget." Vivienne left his office feeling hollowed out. She gathered her belongings mechanically, aware of every stare, every hushed conversation. Grace caught her at the elevator, pulling her into a fierce hug. "This is garbage," Grace whispered fiercely. "Complete garbage." "You did nothing wrong. Tell that to the internet," Vivienne replied, her voice flat. She spent the rest of the day in her apartment, watching her life unravel through a screen. Trevor had posted a subtle but vicious message on social media. "Interesting how some people suddenly find success. Guess the right connections really do open doors." His followers had run with it, creating entire threads speculating about what Vivienne must have done to attract Julian's attention. Each comment felt like another stone piled onto her chest. The call evening arrived, painting her apartment in shadows. Vivienne sat on her worn couch, Julian's business card resting on the coffee table before her. She had looked him up, of course. Julian Westbrook, founder and CEO of Westbrook Technologies, net worth estimated in the billions. A man who rarely appeared in public, whose private life was fiercely guarded, whose business decisions shaped entire industries. And he had held her hand. The absurdity of it all made her laugh, sharp sound that bordered on hysteria. What had she been thinking, grabbing the hand of a stranger? What had he been thinking, claiming her as his companion? Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Miss Hart. The voice was familiar, smooth, and controlled. "Julian, how did you get my number?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. "I have resources," he replied simply. "I wanted to check on you. I imagine today has been difficult." Vivienne laughed again, that same bitter sound. "Difficult is one word for it. I've been asked to take time off from work. My phone has not stopped buzzing. And apparently, half the internet thinks I'm a gold digger who somehow trapped you. I am sorry."
Oh no.
His voice held genuine regret. "I did not anticipate the response would be this intense." "Well, it is." She stood, pacing her small living room. "And I have no idea how to fix it. I cannot fight this. I do not have the money, or the connections, or the power. I am just someone who made a desperate choice, and now I am paying for it."
Ow.
Silence stretched between them. Then Julian spoke, his tone measured and deliberate. "Let me help you." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why do you care? You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. In fact, I owe you for saving me from public humiliation. But this is my problem, not yours." "It became my problem the moment I took your hand," Julian replied. "And I do not abandon things I choose to protect." The meeting 2 days later. Vivienne found herself in the sleek lobby of Westbrook Technologies, surrounded by glass and steel and the quiet efficiency of wealth. A polished assistant had escorted her to the top floor, where Julian's office occupied an entire corner with views that stretched across the city. Skyline Julian stood when she entered, his suit immaculate, his presence filling the space with that same quiet authority she remembered from the gala. But in the daylight, without the chaos of the crowd, she could see more. The slight shadows under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights, the tension in his shoulders, the way his gaze tracked her movements with careful attention. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to a sitting area away from his massive desk. Vivienne perched on the edge of a leather chair, her posture defensive. "You said you could help. How?" Julian sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "First, I want you to understand something. What I did at the gala was not calculated or planned. I saw someone in pain and I responded. But the consequences are real, and I take responsibility for them. That does not answer my question. No, it does not. He leaned forward slightly. The media will lose interest if we give them nothing to feed on. But your ex will not stop. Men like Trevor thrive on control, and you escaped his grasp. Worse, you connected with someone he cannot touch. That threatens him. Vivienne's jaw tightened. So what do you suggest? Let me be visible in your life for a while. Not as a fake relationship, but as a real friend, an ally. Attend a few events with me. Let people see that my interest in you is genuine, not a momentary impulse. It will shift the narrative from gold digger to someone I actively chose to know. And what do you get out of this? Vivienne asked, suspicion coloring her tone. Julian's expression shifted. Something vulnerable flickering across his features before he controlled it. Honestly, I get someone who saw me as a person before they saw my bank account. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? The raw honesty in his voice stopped her protests. She studied him, really looked at him, and saw past the expensive suit and commanding presence to something lonely underneath. People must want to know you all the time, she said quietly. They want to know my money, my influence, my connections. He met her eyes steadily. You grabbed my hand because you needed safety, not because you recognized my name. That matters more than you realize. Plan over the next hour? Julian outlined his plan. They would be seen together at select public events. He would ensure she was not photographed in compromising positions. His public relations team would craft a narrative that painted their connection as mutual interest, not opportunism. I will not lie for you, Vivienne said firmly, and I will not pretend to be something I am not. I would not ask you to, Julian replied. Just be yourself. Let people see the woman I saw at the gala. Someone strong enough to face humiliation and still hold her head high. I did not feel very strong. You reached for help instead of crumbling. That takes more strength than most people have. His words settled over her like a warm blanket. Vivienne realized she was crying, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. She wiped them away roughly, embarrassed. Julian stood, moving to a small bar in the corner. He returned with a glass of water, pressing it gently into her hands. His fingers brushed hers, and she remembered that moment at the gala, the steadiness of his grip. Why are you really doing this? She whispered. He crouched before her chair, bringing himself to eye level. Because when you took my hand, you reminded me what it feels like to be needed as a person, not as a solution. And because I suspect we understand each other better than either of us expected. The first step, their first public appearance together, was carefully chosen. A small gallery opening, exclusive but not overwhelming. Julian arrived at her apartment to pick her up personally. And when Vivienne opened the door in a simple black dress, his expression softened with approval. You look beautiful, he said simply. At the gallery, they moved through rooms filled with abstract paintings and sculptures. Julian kept close, but not possessive, his hand occasionally resting lightly on the small of her back to guide her through crowds. People watched them, of course, but the attention felt different now. Curious rather than mocking, Trevor's social media posts had grown more desperate, more obviously bitter. Public opinion was shifting, slowly recognizing his behavior for what it was, the tantrum of a man who had lost control. Halfway through the evening, Julian led Vivienne to a quieter corner where a single painting hung. It showed two figures reaching toward each other across a void, their fingertips almost touching. This reminds me of that night, he said quietly. Two people reaching across impossible distance. Vivienne stared at the painting, her throat tight with emotion. We are still reaching, are we not? Still trying to close that distance? Julian turned to face her fully, and in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch. Not pity, not obligation. Something deeper, more complex, more frightening. Perhaps, he said softly, but at least we are reaching together. His hand found hers, that same steady grip. And Vivienne realized with startling clarity that this arrangement, this plan to manage public perception, had shifted into something neither of them had. Anticipated, something real. 3 weeks had passed since that night at the gallery, and Vivienne's world had transformed in ways both wonderful and terrifying. She and Julian had fallen into an easy rhythm of dinners, walks through the city, and quiet conversations that stretched late into the night. What had begun as a strategic alliance to manage public perception had evolved into something neither could name, but both felt deeply. Vivienne had returned to work, welcomed back by her supervisor with genuine relief. The gossip had not disappeared entirely, but it had softened. People saw her with Julian enough times to understand this was not a fleeting scandal, but something more substantial. Grace teased her relentlessly about the handsome billionaire who looked at her like she was the only person in any room. But Trevor had not disappeared. One Friday evening, as Vivienne prepared for another charity dinner with Julian, her phone erupted with notifications. Her hands stilled over the clasp of her necklace as she read the first message from Grace. "Do not go online. Please just call me first." But Vivienne was already opening her social media, her stomach knotting with dread. The top trending topic made her vision blur. Trevor had released a video. The footage was expertly edited, showing clips of Vivienne from years ago during their relationship. In each scene, she looked young, uncertain, always slightly out of place at the upscale events Trevor had dragged her to. His voiceover dripped with false concern. "I dated Vivienne Hart for 2 years. I thought I was helping her, giving her opportunities she never would have had otherwise. But she always wanted more than she earned. When I ended things because of her constant need for material validation, she could not accept it. Now, seeing her with Julian Westbrook, I feel obligated to warn him. This is a pattern. She attaches herself to successful men, hoping to climb social ladders she has no business ascending." The video had already gathered thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Most were sympathetic to Trevor, painting Vivienne as a calculating woman who had finally landed her ultimate target. Her phone rang. "Julian, I am seeing it now," she said before he could speak, her voice hollow. "Stay where you are. I am coming to you." "Julian, this is exactly what I feared. This proves everything they said about me. I am the woman who uses men for advancement. It does not matter that it is not true. People will believe him, Vivienne." His voice cut through her spiral, firm and anchoring. "I am 10 minutes away. Do not make any decisions before I arrive." He ended the call, leaving her standing in her bedroom, half-dressed for a dinner she could no longer imagine attending. Her reflection stared back from the mirror, and she saw what others would see now. Not a woman who had been humiliated and helped. A schemer who had orchestrated everything. The confrontation, Julian, arrived in 8 minutes, not 10. Vivienne opened her apartment door to find him slightly breathless, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His tie was loosened, his hair mussed, as if he had run his hands through it repeatedly. "Let me see it," he said, stepping inside. They sat side by side on her couch while the video played on her laptop. Vivienne watched Julian's expression darken with each passing second. When it finished, silence hung heavy between them. "He violated your privacy," Julian said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Those were private moments he had no right to share publicly." "But they make his case," Vivienne whispered. "Look at me in those clips. I always look uncomfortable, out of place. People will see that and think I was only with him for his connections. And now I am with you, someone exponentially more wealthy and influential. The math is simple, Julian." He turned to face her fully, his hands reaching for hers. She let him take them, needing the steadiness, even as shame burned through her. "The math is not simple," Julian said firmly. "The math ignores context. It ignores that he controlled and belittled you. It ignores that you left him despite his wealth, not because of it. And it ignores what I know to be true." "What do you know to be true?" she asked, tears sliding down her cheeks. "That you are the most genuine person I have met in a decade. That you challenge me, question me, and see past every wall I have built. That when you look at me, I feel like Julian, not Westbrook Technologies, not a bank account, not a business strategy, just a man." His words cracked something open inside her chest. The tears came harder now, months of shame and fear pouring out in great shuddering sobs. Julian pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with a protectiveness that felt like coming home. "I am so tired of fighting," she whispered against his chest. I am tired of defending myself against accusations I cannot disprove. Maybe it would be easier if I just disappeared from your life. Let you find someone without all this baggage." Julian's arms tightened. "No, Julian, no," he repeated more forcefully. He pulled back just enough to frame her face with his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I have spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who want something from me. My money, my influence, my name. You are the first person in years who wanted nothing except safety in a moment of cruelty. Do you understand how rare that is? How valuable? But Trevor's video will be handled." His voice carried absolute certainty. "I've already contacted my legal team. What he did, sharing private footage without your consent, making false claims, qualifies as defamation and invasion of privacy. We will bury him in legal action until he begs for mercy." Vivienne shook her head. "That will just make it worse. It will look like you are using your power to silence him. And what do you suggest?" Julian asked, and she heard genuine curiosity beneath the frustration. "Because I will not stand by while he destroys you." The decision Vivienne pulled away from Julian's embrace, standing to pace her small living room. Her mind raced through impossible options. She could hide, wait for the storm to pass. She could fight, risking escalation. Or she could do something she had never done before. Tell her own story. "I want to release a statement," she said suddenly. "Not through lawyers or PR teams. From me, in my own words." Julian stood, his expression cautious. "That could backfire. Anything you say will be picked apart and analyzed." "It will be picked apart anyway," Vivienne countered. "At least this way, it comes from me. I can tell the truth about what Trevor did during our relationship. How he made me feel small and worthless. How I left him despite his attempts to convince me I would never survive without him. How that night at the gala, I grabbed your hand because I was desperate and afraid, not calculating." She turned to face Julian fully, her resolve hardening. "And I can tell them the truth about us. That what started as a rescue has become something real. Something I did not plan or manipulate. Something that terrifies and excites me in equal measure." Julian crossed to her in 3 long strides, his hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. "Are you certain? Once you say those words publicly, there is no taking them back." "I know." She covered his hands with hers. "But I am tired of hiding. I am tired of letting Trevor control the narrative. And I am tired of being ashamed of feelings that are real and honest." Da-da-da-da-da. His eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Finding only determination, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. "Then I will stand beside you while you do it." Statement they worked through the night crafting her statement. Julian offered suggestions, but mostly he listened, letting Vivienne find her own voice. As dawn broke over the city, she posted her words across every social media platform. "My name is Vivienne Hart. 3 weeks ago." A video surfaced showing moments from a relationship that ended 8 months before that gala. What that video does not show is the full picture. Trevor Mason made me feel worthless throughout our relationship. He belittled my career, mocked my background, and convinced me that without him, I was nothing. When I finally found the courage to leave, he told me no one else would ever want me. At that charity gala, I ran into Trevor unexpectedly. He humiliated me publicly, and I panicked. I reached for the nearest hand, desperate for any escape from the shame consuming me. That hand belonged to Julian Westbrook, a man I did not recognize and had never met. Julian could have pulled away. He could have ignored my desperation. Instead, he stood beside me and gave me the protection I needed. What followed was not manipulation or calculation. It was gratitude, then friendship, then something deeper that neither of us expected. I am not a gold digger. I am not a social climber. I am a woman who was hurt, who reached for help, and who found someone willing to see past the noise to who I really am. If that makes me calculating, then I am guilty. But I prefer to call it survival. To everyone who believes Trevor's version, I understand. It is easier to believe the worst about people, especially when someone presents evidence that seems to support their claims. But I know my truth. Julian knows my truth, and that is enough. To Trevor, I hope you find peace with the end of our relationship. But I will no longer let you define my worth or dictate my future. She posted the statement before fear could stop her, then set her phone face down on the table. Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her temple. You are extraordinary. The response to the statement went viral within hours. Comments flooded in thousands of them. Some were supportive, praising her courage. Others remained skeptical, picking apart every word. But something had shifted. Grace called crying, saying she had never been prouder. Colleagues reached out with messages of solidarity. And slowly, inevitably, people began sharing their own stories of toxic relationships and public humiliation. Trevor's video was still circulating, but now it competed with Vivienne's truth. The narrative was no longer simple. 3 days later, Julian invited Vivienne to his penthouse for dinner. She arrived to find candles flickering on the terrace. The city spread below them like a blanket of stars. He greeted her with a soft kiss, something that had become natural between them over recent weeks. I have something to tell you, Julian said as they sat down to eat. Vivienne's heart jumped. That sounds ominous.
Ominous.
Just honest. He reached across the table, taking her hand. That familiar gesture, the one that had started everything. I have been alone by choice for years. I built walls so high that no one could climb them, convincing myself that solitude was strength. Then you grabbed my hand, and those walls cracked. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I am falling in love with you, Vivienne. Not because you need me, but because you challenge me to be better. You see past my money and power to the man underneath, and when I am with you, I remember what it feels like to simply be human. Vivienne's breath caught, tears pricking her eyes. Julian, you do not have to say anything, he continued. I know this is complicated. I know we are still navigating impossible waters, but I needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever Trevor does or the public believes, my feelings are real. She stood, moving around the table to him. He rose to meet her, and she framed his face with her hands the way he had done to her so many times. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered, and it terrifies me because I never thought I could trust anyone again. But you make me want to try. You make me want to believe that not everyone will hurt me. Julian kissed her then, deep and certain, a promise sealed between them. When they broke apart, both were trembling. So what now? Vivienne asked. Now, Julian said, intertwining their fingers, we stop worrying about what other people think. We stop letting Trevor dictate our choices. We just live our lives together and let the rest of the world catch up. Vivienne smiled, real and bright, feeling lighter than she had in years. Together, she agreed. They stayed on that terrace until the stars faded into dawn. Hands clasped, hearts open. To people who had found each other in the most desperate of moments and chosen to build something real from the ashes of humiliation. Trevor's attacks would continue for a while, eventually fading as he realized he had lost control of the narrative. Public opinion would remain divided, some people always ready to believe the worst. But Vivienne and Julian built their relationship on truth, trust, and the simple, powerful act of reaching for each other. 6 months later, when Julian proposed on that same terrace where they had confessed their love, Vivienne said yes without hesitation. Not because he was wealthy, not because he could protect her from cruelty, but because when she looked at him, she saw home, and when she placed her hand in his. As she had done that desperate night at the gala, she knew she would never have to let go.